You're broadcasting vulnerability right now, showing emotions that make you exploitable, revealing feelings that others are using against you, and you don't even realize you're doing it, because Francis Bacon identified 3 specific emotions that destroy your power the moment they become visible to others. 3 feelings that, once revealed, transform you from threat to target, from competitor to victim, from strong to weak. And most people show all 3 of these emotions multiple times every single day, completely unaware that each display is an invitation for exploitation. Bacon didn't discover these emotions through theory. He learned them through brutal experience in the Elizabethan court, where showing the wrong emotion at the wrong time could cost you everything: your position, your alliances, your safety, your life. So he studied emotional displays obsessively, watched what happened when people revealed certain feelings, documented the patterns, and he identified 3 emotions that consistently, predictably, led to exploitation, manipulation, and destruction when revealed. These aren't the emotions you'd expect. They're not obviously weak emotions like fear or shame, though those are dangerous too. These are emotions that seem neutral or even reasonable to display. Emotions that most people show freely without thinking twice. Emotions that feel natural to express. But each one is a weapon handed to anyone watching, a psychological lever they can pull to control you, a vulnerability they can exploit to defeat you. And once you reveal them, once others know you feel them, you've given away power you can never fully reclaim. So let's break down the 3 emotions Francis Bacon warned should never be revealed. The feelings that make you weak, the displays that invite attack, the emotional transparency that transforms you from player to pawn in every social and professional interaction, and why most people reveal all 3 without understanding what they're giving away. The first emotion you must never reveal is desperation. The feeling that you need something badly, that you want something intensely, that you're depending on a particular outcome. The moment others detect desperation in you, the moment they sense that you need what they have or what they control, everything changes. You've just handed them leverage, shown them exactly how to manipulate you, revealed the button they can push to make you comply. Bacon observed this pattern everywhere. The person who desperately wanted a position would reveal that desperation through their eagerness, their availability, their obvious need. And the person who could grant that position would immediately recognize the leverage. They'd make demands, extract concessions, delay and test and negotiate from strength, because they knew the desperate person would ultimately comply, would accept worse terms, would compromise more, because the desperate person needed the outcome more than the other person needed to provide it. This applies to everything: relationships, business, social dynamics, career advancement. The moment you reveal desperate need, you lose negotiating power. You become the weaker party in any interaction, because the other person knows you need them more than they need you. And humans, consciously or not, exploit that asymmetry. They extract more from desperate people because desperate people will give more to get what they need. Think about how this plays out in practice. You desperately want a job. You show up to the interview too eager, too available, too obviously needing this opportunity. The interviewer senses it. Suddenly the offer is lower than it would have been. The terms are worse. The demands are greater. Because they know you'll accept. You've revealed that you need this more than they need you. Your desperation cost you negotiating power you didn't realize you had. You desperately want a relationship with someone. You show too much interest, too much availability, too much obvious investment. They sense it. Suddenly they're less interested, less available, less invested, because desperation repels. Because knowing someone needs you more than you need them creates imbalance that triggers either exploitation or withdrawal. Your desperation either gets exploited or pushes them away entirely. Either way, you lose. You desperately need something in a business negotiation. You reveal time pressure or need for the deal. The other side senses it. Suddenly, their demands increase. Their flexibility decreases. Their willingness to compromise evaporates, because they know you need this deal more than they do. Your revealed desperation shifted all power to them. Now they're negotiating from strength while you're negotiating from weakness. A position you created by revealing your need. Bacon's rule was absolute. Never let others see that you need what they have. Never reveal dependence. Never show that you want something badly enough that you'd compromise to get it. Because the moment that need is visible, you've lost power. You've made yourself manipulable. You've shown them exactly how to control you through the thing you desperately want. This doesn't mean not wanting things. It means never revealing the intensity of your want. Never showing desperation even when you feel it internally. Creating the impression that you have options, that you're evaluating whether this is right for you, not begging to be chosen, that you could walk away without devastating consequences. Whether that's true or not, the perception of it protects you from exploitation that revealed desperation invites. Bacon would mask desperation through strategic indifference. Even when he badly wanted something, he'd present as evaluating whether it suited him, considering alternatives, taking his time. This created the impression that he had power and options even when he didn't. And that impression prevented others from exploiting need they couldn't detect. He got better outcomes by hiding desperation than he would have by revealing it honestly. The second emotion you must never reveal is resentment. The feeling of being wronged, of deserving better treatment, of being undervalued or disrespected. The moment others detect resentment in you, they know several things immediately: that you feel powerless to address the situation, that you're nursing grievances instead of acting on them, that you can be pushed further because you're not going to actually retaliate effectively. Your resentment reveals weakness disguised as righteous anger. Bacon watched resentful people destroyed constantly. They'd broadcast their resentment through complaints, through bitter comments, through obvious displeasure with their situation. And the people who had power over them would note the resentment and respond not by addressing it, but by knowing they could continue or escalate the behavior that caused it, because resentment without action is impotent. It's not a threat. It's just noise from someone who feels wronged but isn't doing anything about it. Think about what resentment reveals. It reveals that you believe you deserve better but aren't getting it, which means you lack the power to get what you believe you deserve. It reveals that you're aware of injustice but aren't correcting it, which means you lack the capability or courage to act. It reveals that you're bothered by your situation but staying in it, which means you're more trapped than you want to admit. All of this information is valuable to people who might want to continue exploiting you. Your resentment tells them they can. This plays out constantly in workplace dynamics. Employee shows resentment about their treatment, not through direct confrontation, through passive-aggressive behavior, through complaints to colleagues, through obvious dissatisfaction. The employer or manager sees the resentment. And what do? Often nothing. Or worse, they continue the behavior that created the resentment. Because the employee's resentment revealed that they're not actually going to leave, not actually going to push back effectively, not actually going to do anything except resent, which makes them safe to continue exploiting. It plays out in relationships. One person shows resentment about how they're being treated, through bitter comments, through obvious unhappiness, through passive-aggressive actions. The other person sees it. And what changes? Often nothing. Because the resentment revealed that the resentful person isn't going to leave, isn't going to actually demand change, isn't going to do anything except show they're unhappy while staying in the situation, which tells the other person they can continue the behavior. Bacon's principle was clear. If you're going to act on something, act. Don't show resentment first. Don't telegraph that you're bothered. Just take whatever action you're going to take decisively and without prior emotional display. But if you're not going to act, if you're going to stay in the situation despite being unhappy with it, then showing resentment just reveals powerlessness while gaining nothing. It makes you look weak without changing your situation. The alternative is strategic acceptance or strategic action. If you can't or won't change the situation, accept it without broadcasting resentment. Maintain dignity through apparent choice, rather than revealing you're bothered but impotent. Or if you won't accept it, act to change it without first showing emotional response. Leave the job. End the relationship. Retaliate effectively. But don't sit in resentful impotence broadcasting that you feel wronged, but won't do anything about it. That's the worst position. Weak and obvious about your weakness. Bacon maintained reputation for being difficult to read emotionally. People couldn't tell if he was bothered by things, couldn't detect resentment even when he probably felt it. This meant they didn't know if their actions against him would trigger response or not. They had to be more careful because they couldn't read his emotional state and therefore couldn't predict his reactions. His emotional opacity was strategic defense that revealed resentment would have compromised. The third emotion you must never reveal, and this is the most counterintuitive, is excessive enthusiasm or joy about opportunities or success. This seems wrong. Isn't enthusiasm positive? Isn't showing you're happy about success natural? Yes, and that's why it's dangerous. Because revealing how much something means to you, how excited you are about an opportunity, how happy you are about a success, this gives others information they can use against you. When you reveal intense enthusiasm, you reveal several things. You reveal that this opportunity or success is more valuable to you than alternatives might be, which means you might be overpaying or overcommitting. You reveal that you're emotionally invested in a way that might impair judgment, which means you're potentially exploitable through that investment. You reveal what you value highly, which gives others leverage if they can threaten what you value. Your enthusiasm is information about your psychology that can be weaponized. Bacon observed that people who showed excessive enthusiasm about opportunities often got worse terms than people who showed measured interest. Why? Because excessive enthusiasm revealed that the person wanted it enough to potentially accept worse terms. It showed they were already sold, already committed emotionally, which meant negotiating leverage shifted away from them. The other party could push harder, ask for more, give less, knowing the enthusiastic person would probably still comply because they wanted it so badly. He also observed that people who showed excessive joy about their successes often became targets for envy, for resentment, for people who wanted to take them down or diminish their success. Excessive enthusiasm about your wins makes others feel their losses more acutely, makes them resent your success, makes them want to undermine you. Your joy becomes their motivation to harm you. Not rational, not fair, but human and predictable. Think about how this operates practically. You get a great opportunity. You show everyone how excited you are, how perfect this is for you, how much you want it. What have you revealed? That this opportunity is potentially more valuable to you than to others, that you're probably willing to accept worse terms than someone less enthusiastic, that you're emotionally committed before details are finalized. All of this weakens your position. Your enthusiasm cost you negotiating power. You achieve success. You broadcast your joy widely. You make sure everyone knows how well you're doing. What have you created? Envy in some, resentment in others. Motivation to diminish your success or knock you down. You've made yourself a target by revealing how much you value what you've achieved. Your excessive enthusiasm invited attacks that more measured responses would have avoided. You're enthusiastic about someone in a relationship. You show how into them you are, how perfect they seem to you, how lucky you feel. What have you revealed? That you're more invested than they might be, that they have leverage over you through your enthusiasm, that you value them highly enough that they can extract concessions because you're afraid to lose them. Your enthusiasm shifted power away from you by revealing asymmetric investment. Bacon's approach was measured response to opportunities and measured acknowledgement of success. He'd show interest in opportunities without revealing how badly he wanted them. He'd acknowledge success without displaying excessive joy about it. This kept others from knowing how much things meant to him, which protected him from exploitation through his actual feelings while maintaining strategic advantages his enthusiasm would have compromised. This doesn't mean being joyless or unexcited internally. It means controlling external display, feeling whatever you feel privately, but showing measured, controlled response publicly, enough warmth to be human, enough restraint to protect yourself from exploitation. The gap between internal feeling and external display is strategic buffer that protects you from others weaponizing your emotions. So why do most people reveal all three of these emotions constantly? Because they haven't been taught that emotional transparency has costs. They believe authenticity is virtue, that showing how you feel is honest and good, that revealing your true emotional state is being real. And in some contexts, with some people, that's fine. But in competitive contexts, with people who might exploit you, emotional transparency about these specific emotions is strategic error that costs you power and protection. Most people show desperation because they can't hide need. They're too focused on what they want to manage how their want appears to others. They reveal it through eagerness, availability, obvious investment, and they pay for it in exploitation, worse terms, and diminished power. Because they prioritized emotional authenticity over strategic opacity. Most people show resentment because they can't separate feeling wronged from displaying that feeling. They need others to know they're unhappy. They want validation that they're being treated badly. They express bitterness as if expressing it will change something. And it doesn't. It just reveals powerlessness while inviting continued exploitation, because they prioritized emotional expression over strategic silence. Most people show excessive enthusiasm because they haven't learned that joy can be weaponized. They want to share their excitement, want others to know how well they're doing, want to display their happiness, and they pay for it in envy, resentment, and attacks from people who use their enthusiasm against them. Because they prioritized emotional authenticity over strategic moderation. The pattern is same. Emotional transparency feels authentic and honest. But in competitive or potentially exploitative contexts, it's strategic liability. You're handing information to others that they can use to manipulate, exploit, or harm you. You're revealing vulnerabilities you should be concealing. You're making yourself weaker through displays that feel natural but cost you power. Bacon's alternative wasn't emotional suppression. It was strategic emotional management. He felt all these emotions: desperation, resentment, enthusiasm. He just didn't reveal them in ways that would cost him. He maintained emotional opacity that protected him from exploitation while maintaining enough warmth and humanity to build relationships. The balance between concealment and connection, between protection and isolation, between strategic opacity and inhuman coldness. This requires several capabilities most people haven't developed. First, awareness of your own emotional states. You can't conceal emotions you don't notice you're feeling. You have to be conscious of when you're feeling desperate, resentful, or excessively enthusiastic. Many people are not emotionally self-aware enough to notice these states in themselves until they've already displayed them. Second, control over emotional display. Even when feeling something intensely, you need ability to show something else externally. This is emotional discipline. Internal turbulence with external calm. This isn't natural for most people. It requires practice. Requires separating internal experience from external expression. Requires being able to feel strongly while appearing measured. Third, strategic awareness of context. You need to know when you're in situations where emotional transparency is dangerous versus situations where it's fine. Not all contexts are competitive. Not all people will exploit you. But you need to be able to distinguish, to recognize when revealing these emotions would cost you versus when it's safe or even beneficial to show them. Fourth, alternative emotional displays. You can't just show nothing. That's inhuman and off-putting. You need appropriate alternative displays. When you're desperate internally, you show measured interest externally. When you're resentful internally, you show dignified acceptance or decisive action externally. When you're excessively enthusiastic internally, you show pleased but measured response externally. The alternative displays protect you while maintaining human connection. Bacon developed all of these capabilities because his environment required it. But most people never develop them because most people operate in environments where emotional transparency isn't immediately punished, so they never learn these skills, never realize they're revealing emotions that cost them, never understand that the power differential they experience partly comes from emotional displays that make them exploitable to people who've learned not to reveal these specific emotions. Here's the brutal truth. In any interaction, the person who reveals less emotional vulnerability has more power. The person who maintains emotional opacity controls the relationship dynamic. The person whose feelings can't be read or predicted has strategic advantages over the person whose emotions are obvious and exploitable. This isn't about being cold. It's about protecting yourself from exploitation that emotional transparency invites. People who reveal all three of these emotions regularly become victims. Not always, not in every interaction, but consistently enough that it patterns their lives. They wonder why they get worse terms in negotiations, why they're exploited in relationships, why their enthusiasm gets used against them, why showing they're upset doesn't change how they're treated. And the answer is, they're revealing emotions that make them exploitable to anyone strategic enough to recognize and use that information. Meanwhile, people who've learned to conceal these emotions, who maintain strategic opacity while feeling things deeply, they experience different dynamics. They get better terms because others can't detect desperation that would weaken their position. They're treated better because their resentment isn't visible, so they seem like they're choosing their situation rather than being trapped in it. Their successes don't create the same resentment because they don't broadcast excessive joy that triggers envy. They're just more protected from exploitation through emotional discipline most people lack. Bacon succeeded partly through this emotional discipline. He felt deeply, but he revealed strategically. He protected himself from exploitation that emotional transparency would have invited. He maintained power through opacity that made him harder to read, predict, and manipulate than people who wore their hearts on their sleeves. His emotional control was competitive advantage in an environment where emotional transparency was liability. So what do you do with this information? You start developing emotional awareness and control. You notice when you're feeling desperate, resentful, or excessively enthusiastic, and you make conscious choices about whether revealing those emotions serves you. Sometimes it might, with people you trust, in contexts that aren't competitive, but often it won't. And in those situations, you develop capacity to feel strongly internally while displaying something more strategic externally. This isn't lying about emotions. It's managing emotional display for strategic purposes. It's recognizing that not everyone needs to know how you feel, that some feelings, once revealed, become weapons used against you, that protecting yourself sometimes requires concealing vulnerability even from people who might exploit it if they could detect it. It's emotional adulthood, the recognition that authenticity has costs, and sometimes those costs aren't worth paying. Francis Bacon's three emotions that should never be revealed: desperation, resentment, excessive enthusiasm. Most people show all three multiple times daily and pay for it in exploitation, manipulation, and diminished power, because they haven't learned that certain emotions, once visible, transform you from threat to target, from strong to weak, from player to pawn. And that protection requires emotional opacity that most people never develop, because they've been taught that emotional transparency is virtue when it's often strategic liability. The choice is yours. Continue revealing these emotions and accept the costs. Or develop emotional discipline to conceal them when concealment protects you. Feel deeply but display strategically. Maintain humanity while protecting yourself from exploitation that emotional transparency invites. That's what Francis Bacon did. That's what separated him from people who were destroyed by revealing emotions they should have concealed. And that's what separates the powerful from the exploited in every domain where emotional information can be weaponized against those who reveal it.